Well, I don't have like a book to sell, okay? I don't have a paleo solution book, or I don't have a vegan solution book to sell. So I don't have to align with any camp. So what I get to do is I get to step back and say, what are the common tenets that all these principles, when they work, follow? Okay? So what do they handle nutritionally that makes them work? Because you have seen people lose a great amount of weight and increase their performance on Zone, and you've seen it on paleo, and you've seen it on the Atkins diet, and you've seen it from people eating just plant food, haven't you? I mean, you guys have seen people succeed under almost any dietary condition. I mean, shit, you go on Survivor and you get lean, you know? So you've seen this work. So what are the principles that make it work, despite what camp you want to align with, for whatever reason you want to align there? Well, these are the three things I think we have to talk about, okay? The first one, and probably the most important one, is food amount, okay? Food amount will drive everything else body weight-wise and performance-wise, okay? You guys have heard of a positive energy balance and a negative energy balance, okay? A negative energy balance is when the amount of energy you're burning exceeds the amount that you're eating. So your energy is negative. Less comes in than goes out. A negative energy balance is the way to drive weight loss. I don't care if you eat cardboard or vegetables or protein. If you eat less than you burn, weight will come off. Now that's not the only consideration, okay? But it's the driver, all right, of body weight. And in some cases, performance, okay? If you're in a chronic negative energy balance, performance may start to suffer. Why? Because you're burning way more than you're taking in. And at a certain point, you're going to run out of usable, metabolically flexible fuel. And when it's time to perform, you're going to have a hard time with it. Okay? So energy balance drives body comp, performance, and in some cases, health. But the point is, food amount is going to be your driver. So let me ask you this. If, let's say you're doing paleo diet, okay, and you're not counting your calories, how can that work? If food amount drives weight loss and you lose weight eating paleo-friendly food, how the hell is that working? Any ideas?
Nutrient density.
Okay, so put it in more plain English. What does that mean?
You're getting more quality nutrients for less calories.
Okay. So maybe if you're choosing paleo-friendly foods, the first thing is that you're actually thinking about what you're eating. And our second habit that we introduced, back to your point, is eat slowly. And people are like, come on, really? I just paid like a bunch of money to join this program, and your suggestion for me is to eat slowly? But I challenge you guys to try it. Even just your next meal. When you guys leave here, okay, and you eat your next meal, try and eat it taking 20 minutes from start to finish. Okay? 20 minutes. All right? Another exercise we had people do is take 10 raisins and take 10 minutes to eat them. Okay? I don't want you to do that always. Okay? It's a one-time experiment that you try. But the idea is to slow down your eating. Why is that like the second habit that we give people? Well, because I think it has a profound effect on food amount. There's some psychology here and there's some physiology here. Okay? Psychologically, if you're still eating after like 30 minutes, you're like, whoa, okay, I'm a pig. All right? But physiologically, it takes between 15 and 20 minutes for satiety to kick in. If you want to start eating less, don't go on fit day and start counting your calories. Start by slowing down. Okay? And even start with our raisin experiment. So thanks for bringing that up, because that's an awesome point, and it's one of our first and foremost habits, even before we start teaching how much protein to eat and how much carbs and how much fats. Do you want to know our first 3 habits in the program? Number 1 is take fish oil and a multivitamin. Okay? I think people are pretty chronically deficient in certain vitamins and minerals and omega-3 fatty acids. When we give these things to them, they start losing weight right out of the gate and feel a hell of a lot better. There's also some data to suggest that fish oil, the omega-3s, especially DHA and EPA, can impact motivation centers in the brain. So if you're starting a new fitness program, for example, and you don't feel all that motivated about it, this may actually kick that process in. Also, it's an easy habit. All you have to do is take that fish oil and the multivitamin, so you build up some momentum. Most of the clients who come to us have tried lots of programs in the past, and so they feel like they're dieting failures, serial dieting failures. Every time I do this, I fail. And if the first habit I can engineer so they succeed, that's awesome. So the first one is fish oil plus vitamin, multivitamin. Second one is eat slowly. And then the next one we introduce is called eat till 80% full. So we teach people about listening to hunger cues, and we teach them what full is, and we teach them what empty is, and then we teach them what about 80% is. And we ask them to stop eating at about 80% full. Okay? So you see, our first two nutrition habits are things that you don't want from me when you start a new program. You want to know about protein and what things to avoid and what junk food and what percentages and how many calories. But it works, I promise you. Those are some great ways to control food amount without counting calories. Now, from that alone, if we were to stop the video right there, I'm sure I'd get lots of hate mail saying, come on, man. Really? This is like old USDA Dietetics Association crap. Calories in versus calories out. That doesn't work. And you'd be right. But we're not stopping there. We're going to go to the next one, which is food type, which is also very important. And you've already heard some reasons why, right? Food has different impact on satiety in different people. Generally, high fiber foods and protein foods are the most satisfying, okay? In terms of like pure gut, stomach hunger, all right? Head hunger is a different thing, but just stomach hunger. So when we make better food choices, more nutrient-dense choices, things that have higher amounts of nutrition compared to the calorie content, we actually inadvertently drive food amount, don't we? And that's kind of a cool effect. But the other thing with food type is that we can better control blood sugar throughout the day, making sure we don't have like the ups and downs and carbohydrate spike in the blood. We can better control hormonal levels, keeping cortisol lower throughout the day. Some foods can actually drive cortisol to go up. We can avoid things that we're intolerant to or have allergies to, which you guys probably hear about this kind of stuff from time to time, which I'm happy to answer any questions on. So food type becomes a critical decision in the process. So first you want to figure out, how am I going to control my food amount? And in most cases, following any diet is going to help you control food amount. Just being aware of what you're eating and saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to start to try and gain muscle now or lose fat now. So I'm going to pay a little closer attention, maybe even write down what I eat sometimes, just to take a look at it and pay attention. That usually drives food amount. Again, you can start counting or you can do some of these other tricks. Food type, really critical. And again, we have to kind of look at what works for different individuals. My general sort of middle of the line, sort of what do we do when we start with a new client, is we look at their body type, okay? So you guys have heard of somatotypes? Yes? Many of you have. So there's generally three. They're not really cut and dry, but there's something called the ectomorph, which is someone who might join our scrawny to brawny, okay? They're thin, they're lean, they're long. If you look at them, you'd say, hey, you would be an awesome endurance runner, okay? Then there's our mesomorphs, which are sort of muscular, V-tapered. They look like strength and power athletes, lean strength, like football players or skill position players, track and field athletes. They're muscular, they got a small waist, mesomorphs. All right? So we have ecto, meso, endo. And for each type, they have a different hormonal profile when we look at them across the board. So for our ectomorphs, we generally go with a higher carbohydrate diet, moderate protein and lower fat. Okay? So that looks, in many cases, a lot like what you might see the American Dietetics Association recommend. High carb, moderate protein, low fat. And there's a type of person that is golden for, but not for everyone, okay? Next, it's also no surprise that the endurance community kind of eats this way, right? Higher carb, moderate protein, lower fat. Now we take our mesomorph. For the typical mesomorph, I actually love the zone split, like the 40-30-30, okay? For them, a mixed balance of nutrients, because mesomorphs tend to be what we call metabolically flexible. So if you give them carbs, they burn carbs. If you give them fat, they burn fat, and they just seamlessly transition back and forth. Whatever you give them, no problem. And that's why generally, even if they don't work out, this is why you want to sort of punch them in the face when you see them, they like have ripped abs and a small waist and big shoulders, and you're like, yo man, you must work out like crazy. Nah, never been to the gym. So that's our mesomorph, right? And then for our endomorph, bigger boned, those are going to be our lower carbohydrate types. For them, kind of like a paleo type of approach, even like an Atkins approach, works fantastically, okay? They tend to oversecrete insulin, so when high carbs come in, they just gain fat way too fast, okay? So you can see another reason why I don't really align with any particular camp is because people are different. Their hormonal profiles are different. They respond differently to different intakes. Now, I don't like to count the macro percentages and stuff, but generally you can just see this pattern, can't you? So our thin, skinny people, they get a lot of carbs, moderate protein, keep the fat low. So carbs and fat go the opposite direction, right? So then we have our mesomorphs, our naturally muscular people. Carbs and fats kind of meet about halfway. And then we go to our endomorphs, people who are larger, and now they reverse. Fats go up and carbs go down, okay? And if you just generally think that way, you're in the right ballpark, okay? And if you're trying to eat that way, you know, if you're an endomorph, just you need to watch the carbs, eat fewer of them, and increase your fats. And if you're an ectomorph, flip it, okay? Does that make sense? So when we talk about food type, that's really what we're looking at there. And this is something that we do very well with our coaching programs and with our coaches. We never tell a client to do anything. What we do is we ask them how confident they are on a scale of 0 to 10 that they can do what we've just co-created. And I think if the medical community did more of this, they wouldn't have that 50% compliance problem. Because what does the doc say? Shh, take 2 of these for your high blood pressure, come back in 6 weeks, right? Was there an ask there? No. Did you ascertain whether I was confident that I could take those things for the next 6 weeks? No. So this is something that's like a mantra to us, and it is annoying, in particular, to friends and family, okay? Because my wife has probably heard the, how confident do you think you can do this on a scale of 0 to 10 way too many times. Nowadays, I'll just ask her, like, hey, do you think we can work on this? And she'll be like, 8. And I'm like, all right, cool. Perfect. But anyway, the last one then on the key principles is food timing. Okay? Now, there was a book that I co-authored with a guy by the name of John Ivey, who's a professor at the University of Texas, and another PhD named Robert Portman, called Nutrient Timing. And the idea was we were looking at this new research showing that, you know, the time around, you know, morning, breakfast, evening, around working out, your body could be more receptive to certain nutrients than others. And the simplest way to put it is, after you work out, your body is tremendously good at dealing with carbohydrates. And even if you give it a pretty big carbohydrate load, it continues to burn fat. Any other time of the day, if you throw in a bunch of carbs, you shut down fat burning completely, okay? And you go right over to carbohydrate burning. After exercise, our bodies prioritize glycogen storage, carbohydrate storage. So it's saying, I'm not going to switch over to carb burning, I'm going to stay at fat burning. So there's also, during this post-exercise time, an increased need for and benefit from taking amino acids or proteins. Amino acids are just the building blocks of proteins. So we found that right after the workout, in some cases even during the workout, gram for gram, any protein we take or carbohydrate we take goes towards recovery, muscle regeneration, compared to the rest of the day. So you get this cool opportunity around the workout to replenish more quickly, okay, and fuel your next performance and feel better for the rest of the day. It also sets up this great opportunity based on the timing concept to eat less the rest of the day. The simplest way to think about this is your biggest meal should come after you work out, and the rest of the day, the further you get from that workout, your meal should get smaller and smaller until the next workout when you have a training session, and then your biggest meal, and then it just tapers down again until the next workout. So let's say you work out first thing in the morning. Then your biggest meal would be, let's say, breakfast right after you train. And then lunch would be smaller, and dinner would be the smallest, okay? But we can flip this on its head. Let's say you work out after work. Dinner would be your largest meal, and then your breakfast would be moderate, and then your lunch would be really small, and then you would work out again. Some people who do intermittent fasting have even taken this to a whole nother level. They eat their only meal of the day, which is a humongous meal, after a workout, and then they don't eat again until after a workout. Okay? So it's just another way to do the same thing. Now some of you are like, there's no way in hell I would ever do that. And that's totally cool with me. But you have to realize intermittent fasting fits in here, right? If it's done properly, it can provide the proper food amount, the proper food type, and the right timing to get you the result that you're after. So the biggest thing that I want you guys to take away from this slide and this discussion is that anytime you see a new diet moving forward and they start wowing you with science, you think about this. You say, how is this going to impact my food amount, the type of food that I eat, and the timing? And do I want that manipulated in this way? Okay? Because almost any successful diet will do these three things. They'll tell you it's doing a whole bunch of other stuff. Okay? But if it's going to work, that's what it does. Every single one of them. Okay? And if it doesn't work, it's because it does any one of these things not very well. And usually it's the amount part. Okay? But type and timing we need to think about because they can even feed back and affect amount. Does that make sense to you guys? Go ahead.
How big of a window do you have there? 30 minutes, an hour?
Good question. That large post-workout meal was the question. How big of a window do you have? Okay? The truth is, the window lasts quite long because what you're doing is trying to replenish, right? And if you haven't eaten anything, then you haven't replenished yet. Now there's a lot of science. I mean, I did my whole PhD on recovery, post-exercise recovery from endurance training and from strength training, okay? So this is like that one aspect of research I spent a ridiculous amount of time studying. And, you know, some people think the window's 30 minutes or 90 minutes or whatever. But the truth of the matter is, it's kind of always open. Because if you haven't eaten, you haven't replenished. And you need to. Now, there's some cool data, though, suggesting that the greatest effect, if you really want to split hairs, comes within the first 90 minutes. Okay? But that data is really only relevant, like really functionally, in diabetics. And I'll explain why. People who have type 2 diabetes, right, we call it insulin insensitivity. So when they eat carbs, the normal amount of insulin that should be released to put those carbs in the cells doesn't work. So they secrete lots of insulin, and it makes them fat. And it makes it very difficult to get rid of that carb still. Type 2 diabetics, during that window, in the exercise and during those few minutes after, have normal glucose tolerance. It's actually quite amazing. We've looked at this in an MRI machine. So MRIs, you usually think of like they take pictures of your brain, right? But if you use a slightly different analysis technique, it's called MRS. I stands for imaging, S stands for spectroscopy. And we can actually measure muscle glycogen in the muscle without actually having to take a biopsy or anything while you lay in an MRI unit. And it's real time. We can even have you do exercise in the MRI unit and watch what happens to carbohydrates and other things in your muscle. It's super cool. It's not like great exercise. You have to just do things with like a fixed foot, right? So we'll do like plantar flexion and stuff like that. Like you create like there can't be any metal near an MRI unit. So you create this like plastic bucket system with water and you gradually increase the water over time and you have to flex your foot over and over and over again. And, but nevertheless, we can measure all the substrate in your lower leg, anterior, posterior, whatever. And anyway, with diabetics, they respond the same as, we'll say, a normal, glucose tolerance person during that window. Yeah, so during the exercise and right after. Then everything goes to hell again. Go ahead.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah, great.
One of them is, does it matter what type of workout, whether it's like an interval training or resistance? far as post-workout timing.
Okay, I'd actually like to think about this as a group. Okay, so the question was, does the type of exercise matter with respect to big meal, carbohydrate tolerance, all that stuff? What do you guys think about that? Yes or no? Does it matter? Yes. So what do you think would drive the matter part? Okay, what do you think would drive the fact that one exercise would give you a bigger effect and one would give you a smaller effect?
Intensity.
Intensity, okay? That's probably correct as well. What physiologically happens that allows you to store carbs better and use that protein better? Any ideas?
Muscle breakdown, glycogen depletion.
There we go, muscle breakdown and glycogen depletion, okay? So here's how you think about it. If I go for a 30-minute walk, am I burning predominantly fat or carbohydrate? Any ideas? It's fat, because it's really low intensity. And when we're at very low intensities, we preferentially just burn fat, okay? So I don't have any reason to replenish carbohydrate, do I? I just burn fat. I didn't actually even go through any carbohydrates, really. So a low intensity session that doesn't blow through much carbohydrate doesn't give you this big meal recovery need effect, all right? However, if you do something that's very carbohydrate intensive, you're going to need the biggest recovery effect. You see what I mean? So it does depend on the exercise. Intensity matters, but people define intensity differently. It really matters how much carbohydrate you use, okay? And if I had a hierarchy, so 30-minute run, 15 minutes of interval training, and 30 minutes of strength training, which one do you think burns more carbohydrate? It's the interval, okay? So that one will probably burn the most amount of carbohydrates. The least amount would be probably the 30-minute run, unless you're world class and you're going out hard at your threshold, okay? If you are, let's take you out of the equation and talk about clients here. If a client is over fat, they don't get all these big extra feeding sessions, okay? Because it will put a big stall on their fat loss. The leaner you get, the more big meals post-workout you get. You know what I mean? So there's a function of leanness, but the fact of the matter is I actually use this all the time, this principle, okay? So I have usually between 1 and 2 meals a week, days a week, where I purposefully overeat. And I purposely overeat on carbohydrates. So they're big, like 5,000 calorie days, about twice a week. And before I have a gym in my home. It's super cool that I have that. So I'll go out and I'll do a 10 or 15 minute circuit session before each of my really huge meals on that day. Because I think sometimes exercise, we have had 2 iterations of the wrong idea about what exercise does relative to nutrition. The first iteration was we burn a lot of calories when we exercise, and that's why we get in shape when we work out. It's the calories we burn when we're exercising. That was a long, well-held belief. It was probably wrong. The next iteration, which we're in right now, is no, it's not what we burn during exercise, it's what we burn like the next 24 hours after exercise. So you might not burn a lot of calories during intervals, but your metabolism is higher for the next day, and therefore you'll burn more while you sleep. Lots of Men's Health articles saying things like this. I'm not sure that's even the right way to think about exercise. I'm starting to think that exercise is like an air traffic controller for nutrition, okay? So when we work out, we tell the body where to send nutrients. Fat cells, muscle cells, liver. So we're basically just directing things, okay? So under this model, this idea of, cool, I'm gonna hit a quick workout, circuits, blow through some glycogen, and then I'm gonna refeed right afterwards. Works, you know what I mean? But the truth is, the higher your body fat when you're trying this, the less likely you are to benefit, because people with higher body fat have a hard time being metabolically flexible, okay? So that exercise may not be enough to shut down the fat gathering effects of that party or whatever. It's better than nothing though. And that's generally my nutritional and exercise motto, okay? A lot of clients come and are doing nothing. And they want the perfect plan that I know they can't follow. Okay? So we do let's start with what's better than nothing. Okay? And then we go up from there.